What does the Greek word in the New Testament that is commonly translated fornication actually mean? Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and that Greek word is porneia as a noun and pornevo as a verb. And it comes etymologically from a root that refers to selling something. And so in its earliest usage in classical Greek, it referred to sex work overwhelmingly. And as time went on, it began to refer also to adultery. Those are the two main concepts that sit at the foundation of this idea of porneia, or fornication. Now, in the Hebrew Bible and in earlier Greek usage, adultery was primarily something that was done by women, because it was women who were really purchased in a marriage. Their sexual availability and their procreative capacities were the commodity that they went along with into a marriage. And both of those things had to have that new car smell. They could not be tainted by prior use. And then because the husband was purchasing those things, they belonged exclusively to him. And so a woman could not go and have sex with another man, whether or not he was married. That was adultery anytime a woman had extramarital sex. It was different for men, though, because they were not possessed by someone else. Their sexual availability was not this commodity that was owned by someone else. And so a man could go have extramarital sex as long as doing so did not violate some other man's possession of a woman's sexual availability and procreative capacities. In other words, a man could have sex with an unmarried woman who was not his wife. That was not considered adultery. Not in the Hebrew Bible, not in early Greek usage. Things change as we get into the Greco-Roman period, however. We get a bit more parity as a result of Greco-Roman social conventions. There is not as much of a love for polygamy in the Greco-Roman world, and you also have the influence of Greek philosophy. And as a result, you have adultery as something that a man does anytime he has sexual intercourse outside of marriage in the Greco-Roman Jewish world. And so men and women achieve a kind of parity there. You also have a more general use of this concept of porneia and pornevo. It becomes something that can refer to any kind of sexual immorality or any kind of sexual activity that is considered inappropriate by whatever social group. And so you can't point to the word and say this always meant this list of things and only that list of things, because that list could be different from time to time, from place to place, from social identity to social identity. And so in the New Testament, and primarily in those writers where they don't really think highly of sexual intercourse and sexual desire, any kind of sexual activity that is not within the bounds of monogamous and heterosexual marriage is going to be considered inappropriate. But there are only a couple of writers in the New Testament where that's clearly the case. We don't really know how everybody felt about the boundaries and the contours of the semantic domain of porneia and pornevo. And so some people will ask, well, does this exclude premarital sex or does it include premarital sex? For the authors of the New Testament, it probably included premarital sex. They probably considered that to be sexual immorality or fornication. However, it's all socially contingent. It all depends upon what the social identity deems appropriate and inappropriate sexual activity. So it's a moving target, and we can see change within the Bible. The Hebrew Bible treats adultery and fornication in a certain way pretty consistently, and then when we get to the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, you see porneia being used in a slightly more expanded sense, and then by the time we get to the New Testament, it is significantly more expanded as a result of the influence of Greco-Roman social conventions and Greek philosophy. So there is change within the Bible. There is no single concept of porneia or pornevo or fornication across the entire Bible. It is different from author to author, from time period to time period, but probably the best way to understand it, if you want to reduce it to a single concept, would be that porneia is whatever a social group considers inappropriate sexual activity. And the fit for this video has been the Data Over Dogma shirt that the Old South Church in Boston gave me.